there are going to be a lot of stories in the news media in the coming months about people who purchase new homes and are being forced to cancel their contracts.
Yep.
And the media will grab hold of that, and so will every YouTuber that wants to make a doom and gloom story. And they'll say, this is the crash. We're in the crash. The market is crashing, right?
Yep.
But they're wrong.
And now, here's your host, Jason Hartman, with the complete solution for real estate investors.
I got to throw you a curveball here because I saw a statistic the other day. You've probably seen the same thing, but it was comparing the 70s to the 2010s and housing increase compared to wage growth. Have you looked into this?
Until 2017, the typical American suffered 40 years of no real wage growth. Under Trump, that finally reversed. It took 4 decades for it to reverse. But the problem is that there are a lot of abnormal Americans nowadays, because back then, not so many people were entrepreneurs. Most people had a 9-to-5 job, and it was just a very different world. Nobody had a side hustle in the 70s, okay? Now, everybody has a side hustle. So these things are very nuanced, and it's very hard to sort of parse them and understand them. There's just a lot to it. But no question, we're going to talk about wages versus housing affordability and housing obligations.
Well, let me ask you this. So I just had Harry Dent on, right? And Harry's
and he's been on my show 11 or 12 times now. Yep. He spoke at one of our events. I've been following his work since 1995. And awesome. I like conceptually the concept that Harry is all about, or at least he was originally about, which was economic demography. Look, I mean, the premise of that is right on. He nails it. People, when they're 46 years old, they're going to earn the most, they're going to spend the most, right? You have peak spending years, peak earning years, and there is a cycle to life. There's no question about that. And when you look at the size of the demographic cohorts, you've got the baby boomers that changed the world and changed the economy forever, with 76 million or so of them. You got my generation, Gen X. There's hardly any of us. There's only like 46 million, lonely generation. And then you've got the millennials, the biggest ever, at about 80 million. But the millennials are different than the baby boomers, of course, psychologically, but they have a whole different situation. They have student loans. Baby boomers didn't have that, right? They basically have a mortgage. They just didn't get a house included with it. They got a worthless college degree many times.
Yep. No, that's true.
It's a different world. But what about Harry? Go ahead.
No. So
the sky is falling. I know.
Well, his perspective is, yes, everything you're saying is true as far as the inventory issue, but his concept is that demand can evaporate really quickly when a recession comes. And so how do you reconcile that?
Well, I'm not reconciling it. It's true. Demand is declining for housing. Redfin put out a report. Now, it's only one company, of course, and there are much bigger real estate companies than Redfin out there that have much more market share than they do. But they do track how many people are interested on their website of, seeing this house, right? And they say that has declined by, don't quote me on this, but I think like 9% or 13% or something like that. Okay. So that did decline a little bit, but you've got to remember that the inventory is so constricted and there is still so much more demand than there is inventory. We are a long way away, barring some massive increase in interest rates or some other situation,
something really significant would need to
with
happen.
A nuclear warhead or something, things can change for sure. But if the market sort of stays where it is, we're a long way away from a housing recession. Although we may enter into an economic recession in the general economy for sure.
Okay, so let's shift, if you can, to we got the inventory, and you do a lot of talking about affordability of housing, right? A lot of people right now speak to the fact that, oh my gosh, housing prices are going up so fast that people aren't going to be able to afford a house. So that on itself is going to put downward pressure on the market. So people have these silly ways of thinking about things. I've just never really understood them because they say people aren't going to be able to afford a house. Well, who are those people? I don't know, what that means, right? Like, explain that to me. So here's one thing you're going to see in the media before I go into this part about
housing affordability and the mortgage payment, which is really how people buy a house, not on the price. They don't care what the price is as long as the payment is low, right? And the payment's affordable. So we'll go into that in a moment. But I don't want to forget to say this. There are going to be a lot of stories in the news media in the coming months about people who purchase new homes and are being forced to cancel their contracts.
Yep.
And the media will grab hold of that, and so will every YouTuber that wants to make a doom and gloom story. And they'll say, this is the crash. We're in the crash. The market is crashing, right?
Yep.
But they're wrong. Here's why those people are canceling, okay? Imagine this. Some first-time buyer went out and bought a $300,000 home, and they got qualified for that mortgage with every penny they could afford, right?
Yep.
That most people stretch to the max, and they buy the maximum house they can qualify for.
Totally.
So 300,000 is the number, for example. Okay. Now, they couldn't lock in their rate as long as the construction took to build the home. Okay. So if that home takes 9 months or a year to build, it used to take 6 months or maybe 8 months, but now it takes longer, supply chain shortages, labor shortages, et cetera. Okay. They couldn't lock the rate in. The rates went up a lot. Okay. They could qualify at 3%, but they can't qualify it at 5.25. Right. So they're out. They have to cancel. The builder will just cancel their contract. And that house does not go unsold. There's a whole another set of people that bought a $400,000 house. And they have the same problem because they bought their maximum based on a 3% interest rate, and they can no longer qualify either. So guess what? They're going to move down and buy that $300,000 house that was just left over by the person who couldn't afford it, who now has to stay in the renter pool.
Got it.
Okay. So everybody moves down the socioeconomic ladder. It's a lot more work for realtors and builders and lenders, for sure. It's a huge hassle.
Yep.
But all of that housing inventory still gets allocated to somebody.
Yep.
Okay. And the rental market at the bottom strengthens because those people stay in the rental market and increase rental demand.